host of Mustard Moments. Real people, real mustard. This is Mustard Moments. Today I have a root beer mustard, which is very exciting. I've never had anything of the sort.
Sounds really good.
I found it in Wisconsin. I took the trip up and discovered a place called the Mars Cheese Castle. They had a lot of mustards inside the cheese castle. This is Mike Held. He's a root beer aficionado. We're going to talk to him about root beer. We're going to talk to him about mustard. And we're going to talk to him about root beer mustard. Then at Frankshire, my restaurant, we also have a delicious draft root beer. If you're in the Pittsburgh area, come try this root beer. Mike's actually a bartender at the restaurant. He can tell you a little more about it.
Hey guys, how you doing? Yeah, so here at Frankshire, we actually have the 1919 root beer. You know, it only comes in drafts. It comes in like mini kegs and full kegs. So if you ever need to just, you know, get one at home, get like that perfect root beer, this is probably some of the best root beer I've ever had. And like Tim said, I love root beer. Like, if I'm not going to be drinking regular beer, I'm going to be drinking root beer. Sometimes I call it super water, which for all your Parks and Rec fans out there, that's totally where it's from. I have tried both. They do regular beer, Sprecher. They also do root beer. They do a whole bunch of other sodas too. They have like blue raspberry, orange, grape, all this other stuff. And every single one of them is just delicious. If you ever find it somewhere, especially the sodas, get one of those because they're so good.
Pro tip, I think, about root beer, even if you're at home, if you put it in a frosted mug, I don't know what happens, but there's magic. It's so good. It gets a little icy. I know I've been to many A&W restaurants, and they're famous for the root beer. They do the frosted mug thing. Highly recommend it that way. We're going to get into the mustard itself now. We have standard yellow mustard, which is a participant in every Mustard Moment. It's the baseline, and we always compare it to the more interesting, more special, more unique mustard. We have the root beer mustard. You can see it's a much darker color. We haven't tried this yet, so you're going to get our true reaction. Yellow mustard, of course, looks like that. Just visually, you can see the difference. I think
Definitely that
probably
like, root beer color kind of coming through.
Yeah, there's brown sugar in this plus root beer, so it's vinegar, water, brown sugar, root beer concentrate, and then the mustard seeds. So it's going to be pretty sweet, we think, almost like a barbecue sauce. Also salt, turmeric, and paprika, all standard mustard ingredients.
Well, I'm just going to dive right on into the root beer.
Yeah, and
mustard. It's pretty viscous, I'd say. Pretty similar to a normal mustard kind of consistency. It's a little bit thinner.
I agree with that.
So yeah, let's just try it. So yeah, it's a little sweeter. Has a little bit of like the mustard in the background. It's almost like a honey mustard, or kind of like a
similar to honey mustard.
Kind of like the mustard-based kind of barbecue sauce. With definitely the molasses in there. I don't taste too much of the root beer itself.
Right, neither do I. It's a little more tangy than I expected.
Right. In South Carolina, a lot of their barbecue sauces are more mustard-based. Whereas you go to other different areas, I think it's something like Mississippi and places like that, they have different variations, especially in the South. Some states and different cities even will have more molasses, more of that brown sugar kind of added. Some have like a spiciness that they kind of add to some of those barbecue sauces that make it sort of thinner. From the oils of the peppers, but in South Carolina they have the sort of mustard-based barbecue sauce almost all over. So if you're from South Carolina or you've ever had that kind of barbecue sauce, this is pretty close, but it is a little bit more of that mustard flavor, I'd say, that mustard seed.
So I just had a sip of the draft root beer and then went back to this root beer mustard, and I feel like the root beer flavor, it's at the very beginning, just like right there, right away, and then it kind of transitions into more of a sweet or honey mustard. Let's see if you agree.
Yeah, with the sugars and other sort of like spices and with root beer you have like vanilla, you have sarsaparilla root. think you also sometimes have like cloves and a whole bunch of other sort of roots and things like that thrown in. So with that sort of residual sugar coming from the root beer going to the root beer mustard, that adds that kind of extra. You do taste more of the root beer that way. So that would definitely that's a great idea, I think. Then, if you have this with a little root beer on the side, it definitely amps up the flavor.
It's like as soon as it hits your tongue, you taste the root beer.
Yeah.
And then by the time you're finishing your bite,
it's that like honey
it's more
mustard.
like mustard.
Yeah, that honey mustard kind of finish.
So we're going to dip into the yellow mustard now. The tried and true mustard standby.
Good. Always good mustard.
I'm a big fan of yellow mustard on a hot dog. I'm a big fan of brown mustard on a hot dog. I have hot dogs a lot of creative ways, but it's just really hard to top the combo. And similarly on a pretzel.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Jumping from this to this is much heavier, like vinegar punch.
Right. It's like a punch in the face.
That that mustard punch. So this is definitely a more subdued, a little bit sweeter.
What got you into mustard? Do you have an earliest mustard memory?
So I think for me, where it kind of came from was when I was younger. My parents at least told me that they gave me pickles when I was really young, like a year old or something, and I hated it.
Okay.
So I was always like afraid to try pickles.
Dill pickles, right?
Dill pickles, yeah, dill pickles until I was like, I don't know, 7 or 8,
so that's
somewhere
a big
around there.
vinegar flavor, dill pickles, right? As is mustard.
Yeah, and so I started eating those, and then when I tried them then, I just loved dill pickles. After that, I sort of liked that sort of salty, vinegary kind of bite to things. It kind of adds this slight spiciness to it, but still it's just super, super delicious. I don't like ketchup because ketchup is very sweet. I'll throw it on a hot dog every once in a while.
I like it on a cheeseburger a lot.
Yeah, on a cheeseburger mixed, but I
feel it goes well with cheese. Yeah, or mixed with other things.
Always mix it with something.
Right.
Ketchup is never alone for me. It's
the blend
always
of ketchup and mustard works for me.
Right. You can get so many varying flavors.
Sure.
Depending on which mustard seeds you use.
That's part of the fun of this show is finding new mustards. I love it.
Yeah, it's like depending, if they're using more of like a heavier brown kind of one, a little bit older or more roasted kind of mustard seed, that gets a little bit more of that earthy flavor.
Yes.
Whereas if you're just doing like a real young, unaltered kind of uncooked mustard seed, you're getting that really like bright yellow that's really sort of tart almost and sort of tangy, like you said.
Sure.
So that's why I like mustard, really.
Since you are such a fan of root beer, and this episode we're talking a little bit about root beer as well as mustard, I'm wondering, can you give us a top 3 for people out there who maybe love root beer, haven't tried that many brands?
You're looking at like cheap root beers that you can get everywhere. I'm always going to go Barks. If you're going to go really, really fancy, it's not super fancy, but just sarsaparilla. The brand is sarsaparilla.
Okay, I've not had that.
And it's just a sarsaparilla heavy root beer.
I feel like with each bite of this mustard, I actually taste the root beer more. It's very interesting. It's
I like it.
It's coming through. It's almost like, because it's subtle, so the first bite, it's like, oh, this is mustard, but the more you have, the more I'm picking up on the root beer.
With my top 3, sort of my next one, in Virginia, my home state, there's a brewery called the Lost Rhino Brewery, and I think it's out of Richmond. And a few years into them making beer, they decided to switch over and start also doing a draft root beer, which a lot of breweries are sometimes delving into. That's what Sprecher did.
And that's essentially what we have on tap, right? I don't know if 1919
kind of
beer,
essentially what we have on tap. It's like a draft style root beer, and Lost Rhino makes it, and it's just super good.
So when I was a kid, I always liked root beer. I don't know if I like it as much as you, but it was always one of my favorite sodas. And my family hosted a lot of foreign exchange students from all over the world. But it was really interesting because root beer was not a thing in those other countries. Maybe now with more globalization, root beer is more common over there, but they had never had it before and they tasted it. And almost all of them hated it and would tell me that it tasted like medicine. And then peanut butter was the other thing. They could get peanut butter in the States, and they could not get peanut butter in a lot of the countries they lived in, they loved it, and they'd take like peanut butter stuffed in their suitcase home, but nobody wanted to take the root beer home. But I think it's great. I've always liked it. I guess it's a definitively American drink. And then
definitely an American drink.
I think so. Thanks for joining us in this edition of Mustard Moments. Thanks to Mike for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks to Sprechers for making such a delicious root beer mustard. Cheers.